Okay. Hi. So my name is Arlene, and welcome to Tuckerton the People. This is going to be our new exhibit. So it's replacing Tuckerton 1900. So when you come into the lighthouse and go to your left-hand side, you'll walk into the new exhibit. Um, just a little bit about ourselves first. I'm Arlene, and I'm the folk life director at Tuckerton. Just started back in January. Got my bachelor's degree from Temple and my master's degree from Monmouth, and I concentrated on both anthropology and history. Um, I've worked in different museum settings, such as University of Penn and Temple University Museum. Um, but yeah, this is exciting, and tell you a little bit about Adriana.
Hi, I'm Adriana Martinez. I am the Education Director and Coordinator here at the Tuckerton Seaport. I graduated with a BA in History from Stockton in 2018, but I have taken a ton of classes in Museum Studies and Museum Education at the University of the Arts in Philadelphia. I have experience in both non-traditional and traditional learning environments for students and adults throughout Atlantic City, a couple different places, as well as Philadelphia. I've also interned and have done some projects for Philadelphia's Magic Gardens, the Academy of Natural Sciences of Drexel University, and of Laurel Hill Cemetery. And I've been with the Seaport since November, and it's been a whirlwind, but it's been a lot of fun planning this. All right. So you may be asking yourself, why Tuckerton 1900? It's been there for a bit. When we were looking at the exhibit, we realized there was a lot of artifacts, many artifacts, and many photos and articles from our collection inside. It started kind of piling up around the exhibit, displayed nicely, but there was a lot. It ended up causing this larger problem of there being too many stories and too many artifacts with a lot of history being displayed. So not one story could shine on its own. It resulted in a little bit of an overwhelming experience for a new visitor. I'm not exactly sure what to make of all of the stuff that was kind of just being thrown at them. This exhibit also had a second problem, which stemmed from the name and overarching theme of this exhibit. So it's called Tuckerton 1900. And if you've been to the Seaport before and have walked into this exhibit, you also might know it as Turn of the Century Tuckerton. It goes by both those names. But with those names, it locked the exhibit in one moment in time. And all of these items that were displayed were inspired by the turn of the century or actually from the turn of the century. But the initial goal of this exhibit was to connect it to now rather than keep the story in the past. So when reevaluating this exhibit, we asked ourselves, how can we make this exhibit relevant to the modern day? We decided to start from the beginning of even planning Tuckerton 1900 to find the answer to that question. So the original inspiration for the exhibit was the Tuckerton census from the year 1900. And we had this big lectern with a whole bunch of like big blown up pages from the census, all the entire census there. And the initial goal of this exhibit, Tuckerton 1900, was to have the visitor look at the census and connect with the everyday people who were in it by looking at the occupations and the names in order to connect with these people and see what they did, maybe even find that they were more similar to how we are now than they'd expect. But when we were looking at this exhibit, we realized that there are many ways to connect to the past from the present, and even this little town of Tuckerton to the people who travel here from across the country and sometimes the world. So using that census, that's where our brainstorming kind of began. So you want to do this one? Okay.
I'll do this slide. So basically what we did was we used genealogy, we used personal stories, we contacted people that were actually still in the area, these descendants. So we actually, got a little inside scoop about each person. well, the people that we could trace back to today. We use their history, and we use primary sources. Each person has a story, and you can find these stories through archives, through newspaper clippings, through ancestry.com, through military archives, and you could pretty much piece them all together just to find out the full story about each person. So that brings us to the research. So we used Ancestry, we traced back different family members and built these family trees to have them from back then till today. So that's how we were able to contact some people today, or even contact people from like historical societies to see if there was any artifacts or anything that they left behind, so we could, see it today. And then we also looked into military archives and the census. The census actually tells you a lot. Aside from who they were and their name and their children, we found out what kind of occupations, if they had any children that passed away within those 10 years. And you can see how their occupations change over time. Maybe one year they were a mariner or a bayman, and then next they were, running a store. So our goal for this exhibit is to trace back generations and to take a look into their lives. Especially now that we have so much technology, and it's really easy to look into people's lives today because we have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Well, back then they didn't have any of that stuff. The only thing they had was the census, and that's the only way we could look into their lives. So we were just taking a glimpse of them back then until to the turn of the century. We traced them all the way back to 2020. Maybe there were still people in the area that, they still live. Maybe they still had a building standing up, artifacts, so. Gianna.
All right, so we started kind of with what we had, and one of the things we had the most information on was Quakers in Tuckerton. Quakers are vital to the early history of Tuckerton, so incorporating their history into this exhibit was necessary for this larger story we're trying to piece together. And essentially, the colonial history of this area, Little Egg Harbor, is Quaker. By the year 1700, about 70% of West Jersey, the little sliver we're in, was Quaker. The Little Egg Harbor Monthly Meeting House, it's a meeting house that was built in 1863. And you can see here that there is a picture, an older picture of what it looked like. This is from the archives of the Library of Congress, I believe. And the house still stands here, but it looks much different than this picture that's here. It has been said, we found in an article, that this house has been rebuilt over 50 times. We aren't exactly sure how many times it's been rebuilt, but it has been rebuilt at least once. As I said, the house is still standing. It's actually a short stroll from the seaport itself, and it's still being used to this day by Quakers in the area. So Quakers believe that the presence of God exists in everyone, which puts all men on equal footing. Because of this, Quakers have had a relatively complex history with slavery. At first, slavery was approved of. As long as you baptized those who were enslaved and allowed them to be part of the church, everything was okay. But eventually this led to a schism. If all men are equal in the eyes of God, then why should any one man own others? As time went on, Quakers began to stand up in favor of abolition. And it also helped that there were many Quakers by this time who were African-American, who were doing good in the community, serving their community, being just proper Quakers in general. So there was no need for this sort of caste system that existed at the time. In any case, Quakers ended up playing a major role in the migration of African Americans to this area. And that brings us to the very first family we're going to talk about. So the Mapps family starts with these Tuckerton Quakers, and the family line eventually makes history on a national level from what we were finding when we were figuring out the family tree here. David Mapps is where this story starts. He was one of the very first African-American Quakers to settle in Tuckerton. He married another African-American Quaker named Grace, whose wedding vows we found over the course of our research. They're actually pictured in this slide, and we will have a larger blown up copy in our exhibit. Very happy to find those. David Mapps was known to house other Quakers traveling to the area from England. We found a record from a group consisting of William Rickman and William Forrester, who were traveling with Mildred Morris Ratcliffe, John Lloyd, and Mary Steer. From this account, we have found that David Mapps was evidently a gracious host. He was spoken very well of. He also had a farm. He was a farmer. And other than that, he didn't have like a larger historic influence other than like that little bit in the area. Grace Mapps, unfortunately, died before David, and he would remarry a white woman named Anna. They had a daughter named Grace Ann Mapps, who I've listed here in this slide, and she would go on to make history in her own right. She is a published poet and eventually became a teacher. Grace Ann was also the first African-American woman to graduate from New York Central College. She also became a principal at the Quaker Institute for Colored Youth in Philadelphia. In our exhibit, we have found some of her poems, so we will also have a little bit of those in the exhibit for you guys as well. If you move on to the next one. So the Parsons family, they are a major player in Tuckerton's history, with their business still running to this day. They're also a perfect example of the strong connection of this town and the Barnegat Bay's natural resource, which is seafood. For this exhibit, for this part of the exhibit, we're going to start with E. Walter Parsons, who constructed the original clam house in 1935. It's pictured here and recreated with love and care here at the Tuckerton Seaport, if you happen to stop by. E. Walter Parsons married into the Mathis family, who were the originators of this clamming and seafood family business. He married Sarah Mathis and received this business from Daniel Mathis, Sarah's father, who was a descendant of the originator, John Mathis. This whole entire business goes back like to the early 1900s. So Parsons eventually over time would grow to be a major supplier of clams to the Campbell Soup Factory, being a major supplier, giving about 9 million clams per year by the 1940s. They still work the bay to this day, selling seafood and acting as a key player in oyster reef recovery. Tuckerton was once known as Clam Town because of the clamming industry that has been here. And with that major industry came a lot of damage to the environment. Clams and oysters are filter feeders. They help filter the water of any sorts of toxins, keep the environment running smoothly in this wonderful ecosystem we have here. And Parsons has always kind of been a player to put more oysters and more clams back out into the bay. Right now, they are a major part of oyster reef recovery. With Stockton University, they've created the Tuckerton Reef, which is a place to seed and cultivate oysters sustainably while protecting the environment.
So our next person that's in our exhibit is the Fox Kramer family, more specifically Cinderella Kramer. She was the first woman to actually ride the Tuckerton Railroad, and there's actually a very interesting story about that too. She was actually the first unofficial first woman to ride the Tuckerton Railroad because of her friend. Cinderella's friend Bill Day was actually one of the engineers who were laying down the railroad tracks for the Tuckerton Railroad. He only had about 6 miles left to, complete it. And he asked Cinderella one day, "Hey, I'm going to lay down these tracks. Would you like to come with me?" Of course, she said yes. Took a little bit of convincing, I was reading. And the next day she actually went out and went with Bill Day and went on to the train carriage, pulled the lever, and she was officially the first woman to ride the Tuckerton Railroad. I thought it was really, really cute. There is some newspaper clippings. Here's a little snippet on the side, but we have the full newspaper clipping at the exhibit. So if you want to come and look at it, you are welcome to. And there's actually a picture of the carriage that she actually rode in. It is currently, I want to say it's in Beach Haven, but don't quote me on that. But I know you can still look at it, a little bit of piece of history. She actually rode the Tuckerton Railroad in November 1871. And she actually has a interesting story other than that as well. She was married back in the 1830s to someone named Fountain, that's his name. Cinderella and Fountain are very two unique names. That's another thing that actually pulled me towards them, is because of their names. She's actually, Cinderella before Cinderella was actually a person that we know today. And while I was actually looking through her family tree, I found out some other interesting things, such as I know her great grandson was a stockholder during the Great Depression. She was actually from a lot of money. She never remarried after her husband, Fountain, was actually lost out in sea. We did some deep diving and found out that we have the Barnegat Historical Society actually had some photos, a shawl, a box that was actually from her that was donated by her granddaughter, Nina. And we actually have it in our exhibit now. So if you want to come and see that, feel free to come over to the exhibit. And you can learn more about the Tuckerton Railroad as well, because we also have an exhibit about the Tuckerton Railroad. So that also brings us to the next person, the Littmans. Isidore Littman was a Jewish immigrant from Russia. He came over to Tuckerton and settled around the 1900s. After the 1900s, he relocated to different places within Ocean County. He was a merchant who owned a dry goods store. So he sold different clothing, he sold flour, coffee. He also sold different textiles. Anything you could think of, he probably sold. It was kind of, think about it as the Walmart of the 1900s. That's basically what he had, which was actually interesting, because he actually had his store passed down to his kids after he became a real estate agent, which I thought was very interesting. He was a real estate agent and an insurance salesman during the Great Depression as well. His son Nathan worked as a telegraph messenger during the 1900s, and he eventually worked for a chemical company. And then you could see during this, in the census, it actually states what he worked at. It also shows where he worked at, with different primary sources that we found. We found out what the name was. It's American Stores Co., very original. And yeah, he passed it down to his kids. And what I thought was really interesting about his family, other than them being immigrants from Russia who are also Jewish, his daughter also had a job which was very different during that time, mainly because women weren't allowed to have jobs. Most of the time when you're looking through the census, you notice that the head of the house, which is usually a man, usually has a job. Then the wife, who usually never has a job, and then the kids. The sons probably have a job, but the daughters usually never have a job. So what I found was different was his daughter was also employed. She was a stenographer, I believe. And she wrote different letters and paperwork for courts, or for people who wrote books. So you'll talk and then she'll type. So she could type as fast as how someone could talk, which I thought was very interesting. I found out that his store, the American Stores company, is actually listed in Jamesburg's historical archives. And there is actually a lot of different things about his family, but you have to come to the exhibit to learn more about it. Oop, how do I click on the next page? Okay. So speaking of Isidore, we go over to W.C. Jones. W.C. Jones and Isidore were, I don't want to say the same person, but they were similar. They both owned stores, which they were both entrepreneurs. They sold a lot of different things in their store. So for W.C. Jones, he was everything. He was a druggist. He was a jeweler who fixed glasses. He was a movie theater operator. He was a photographer. He sold paper goods. He sold perfumes. He fixed watches. Anything you could think of, this man did it. And he also actually served in the Spanish-American War as well as a hospital servant. So he knew how to do basic simple surgeries, which is, I think, crazy. I don't know how to do simple surgery. So him knowing to do all these different things, it's really interesting. He knew how to repair things. He like watches, cameras, he did developing, and we actually were able to trace down his ancestors who still live in Tuckerton till this day. I actually had the opportunity to interview her, Kathleen Eggleston, who is a historical artist in the area. She actually uses W.C. Jones photographs that he took back in the 1900s, and she makes paintings of them. She also goes around New Jersey and paints different sceneries for the bay, any natural sceneries you'll see throughout the Jersey Shore. She usually paints them. She owns a store. She's very tech savvy. She has her own Etsy store as well. And she's actually a really awesome person. And knowing the story about W.C. Jones and then talking to her, I noticed that her whole family is a family of artists and entrepreneurs. Her great-great-grandfather, W.C. Jones's father, he was a photographer. And if you could look down at the slide, we actually took a snippet of the census, and you could see that he was listed as a photographer. She told me a story that when W.C. Jones was younger, he and his father will go around Tuckerton and South Jersey and took portraits of people. And then that's how they made their living. And then once W.C. Jones got a little older, he used his photography skills, and then he opened up his own store, and he was the pharmacist of Tuckerton. Anything that you needed, you would go to his store because he knew everything and he had everything. And we're lucky enough to actually have some things from him in the exhibit. Kathleen donated some of his artifacts, and we actually had some of his artifacts from his store that are actually housed at the exhibit right now. So when you come and visit, you could see that. So I thought that was very interesting. So another part of the exhibit is, so we're tracing these people and we're learning about people. We also want to learn about you as well. So we actually teamed up with Fox Iron Fox Typewriters, who is a local business. There you go. It's a local business who actually had this program where they donate their typewriters for a certain period of time, and the program helps promote writing and literature as well. So we had our fun spin to it. We teamed up with them where you could actually go and type on this typewriter in the exhibit, and you can share your story with us, or you could take it home and share it with your loved ones. After you type up your story, you could post it up to our Tuckerton Seaport family tree. And from there, we could share your story with everybody. You could talk about something about yourself, or if you had like a relative that does something, different, we would love to hear these stories. And we also are working with Story Corps as well, which is a oral history program, which these oral histories and these interviews will be uploaded to the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. Think about it as the Google for oral histories. So you could go on this website, type in Tuckerton, and all of these stories from the area will come up, and you can listen to these stories. And these will be archived, and hopefully future generations, when they want to learn more about Tuckerton or the Jersey Shore, they could go onto Story Corps and they could look up these stories and listen to these stories from the people who lived this history. And we have a community page, which is up now. You can actually, I believe we have 2 interviews up right now, one with Kathleen Eggleston and the other one with Nikki Giberson. You can learn more about their stories and their life within, the Jersey Shore, South Jersey. They have very interesting stories. Kathleen will tell you the story about W.C. Jones and how, her childhood and everything, being born in 1930 and, living through all that history until 2022. And she's still doing a bunch of things. And then Nikki Giberson, she has different programs within Port Republic. She runs her own felting business. She also teaches classes, and she actually comes to the Seaport, I believe once a month, to do felting classes. So you can actually meet her. And one of the more interesting things is she is the first woman mayor in Port Republic, and she tells you a little bit about that inside scoop. So feel free to come visit our community page, and you can listen to these stories. My plan is to add more as time goes by, so we can have a large collection, and you can, learn about the people of South Jersey. And then Adriana will tell you about the last one.
So with all of this, we really want to encourage visitors to interact with history, share their stories, seek ways to discover history on their own. And that extends to children as well. So we are going to have a little bit of a coloring page drawing activity called My Family Story Tree. It is a page with these different drawing prompts, and rather than having writing prompts that may be for the typewriter, that will encourage children to look at their families, look at important people in their families, and talk to their parents or any other adults that come with them, to start keeping family histories, because family histories really start from your own family memories, things that start from when you're a child. Like Arlene has interviewed Kathleen Eggleston. And one of the best ways, and of course, families always keep their kids' drawings. It's just a nice little memento to kind of keep and have, and start having kids understand the importance of keeping the memories of their families alive, and their importance of their story and that family history. We also are working on a couple of other interactives for this exhibit as well, that are not pictured here. We have a lot of focus on lots of primary sources. So we will have information on how to use primary sources and different primary sources that you can use if you are looking up your own family history or the history of the people around you. And we also will have an activity where you can learn to read the census as well. We are planning on having a big lectern full of all of the census pages, as we did before. We're going to have strips of the census that are focused more on these families that we're kind of following throughout the exhibit. And that way you'll be able to get a little glimpse of how to read these older documents, because back in the day, they did use script. It's not typed and it's a little rough to read. But once you get the hang of it, you really can start finding some amazing stuff. So we hope to create these little interactive introductory elements to get people into looking at these kind of histories.
So, any questions, feedback? We will love to hear from everyone.
Will we be able to email slides? It was a question in the chat. Okay. From Francis. The recording, it's being recorded. We definitely, is there an easy way to email out to the group, Caitlin? Any sort of things from us?
Yeah, I have at the end of the talk, I usually have a list of everyone's email addresses, and I can send any materials you guys have, resources, I can email to the attendees today.
Of course, okay. We definitely can. With this, we wanted to give like a little snippet, a little sneak peek. So it's not going to be absolutely everything. What we'd send out wouldn't be absolutely everything. We want people to be able to experience it here. Hopefully, knock on wood, we're looking for new ways to present all of our information that we have from exhibits and in our archives online. I'm currently working on a project to update our current website. It's a little outdated and very much under construction. But hopefully with that, we will have a space to hold all of this information for people that may not be from the area that can't get down here to see the exhibit.
And we're hoping to actually have QR codes for each person in the exhibit, where you can actually scan the QR code and then you'll have access to all of our primary sources. So any military records, any census, if we have find any photos, any primary sources will be connected to that QR code. So if you don't have time to look through everything, or have time to look through each primary source, you'll be able to look at it from your phone, from your house. And again, like, you can access all of these primary sources from our new website.
All right, great. Yeah, there's a couple of people in the chat saying that they're excited to see all the new components to the exhibit. So that's really fantastic, for sharing all these different family stories. And I like the interaction, getting the kids involved too with sharing their stories, and the people that visit too, and they can share with everyone else their history or their experience living in Tuckerton. So very cool. I'm kind of scrolling up a little bit. I want to make sure we get some questions answered.
For the activities, we were actually trying to hit every age group, something for the little ones until, older, much older. So we have, coloring pages, the one that Adriana showed you. We also have another census activity. The typewriter is aiming for people who are a little older and who could, share their stories more. And then, they have the option to keep that story, or if they want to post it up, they can. Though on those cards, there'll be a spot where you can write your name and your email, or maybe your phone number, and you might get a call from me. You may get a call from me. You might get an interview.
Awesome. Good to know. We have a question about what year the Quakers, or someone asked the Quakers, what year was that?
I had the chat open, and I believe Francis answered that question perfectly. The She says that the first meeting house was 1709, and the current meeting house is 1863. They've been here. They've been here since like the beginning in this area. The land was actually acquired from the Lenape to be Quaker land, even before like the town of Tuckerton itself was established. So it's been from the very, very beginning.
And is that house by the lake there? You said it's a short walk from the seaport.
Yes, it's actually like right on Route 9. It literally, like, I was gonna say a 5-minute walk, but I feel like even that would be a lie. It's a less than a 5-minute walk.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Right down the street, and then like across it.
Okay, yeah. I'm sure, yeah, I know I pass that driving to and from work every day. I'm sure a lot of us do.
Yeah, it's really funny. I didn't actually notice because it's a little farther back.
It is. There's
so
like
I
a
didn't
tree.
notice it until it was finally pointed out. And like also there's like a tree in front of it. And then I was like, oh wow, cool, the meeting house. I didn't realize it was that close.
Very neat, yeah. All right, next question. Do you have an exhibit on farmer/agriculture in Tuckerton?
We don't have a specific one yet.
Yet.
Mhm.
We might in the future, maybe.
We, in the David Map section, we are going to touch on it a little bit because he was a farmer.
Yeah.
But of course that would take up to do the entire influence of agriculture in this area, because there's a lot of farming in this area. I think if I'm remembering correctly, Tuckerton was also called Farm Town for a little bit, but I'm not positive. I might be mixing up the industry names for Tuckerton. But that would be an entire major exhibit on itself if we were to like really get into like how important agriculture was to this area.
Yeah, and maybe you know, in some of the exhibits you have touch on it, but not necessarily have its own. Yeah, okay. What has happened to other items from the Tuckerton 1900 exhibit that you're not using now?
They've been relocated to different exhibits. That's what we're trying to do. We are moving wherever that isn't being used in the new exhibit is being relocated to different exhibits that fit it more. I don't know any exhibits like anything like off the top of my head that I've moved to different spots, but there was a lot of things that we did just, you know, if it was like Parsons related or like clamming related, it will be relocated to the Parsons building, because that's more, you know, connected to each other.
A little bit of it has been moved upstairs, so we have items
yes, upstairs too.
from the Historical Society that got moved upstairs to the second floor of the lighthouse. It has its own little corner for now.
Yeah, like Tuckerton Wireless got moved up.
Tuckerton Wireless. We had a large, gorgeous piece of artwork of Tuckerton Wireless that we actually put in Folk Art 101 for now, which fits the theme considering it is technically a piece of folk art. So it works very well there for us. And then there are other things that unfortunately we will just have to put in storage for now. But we are looking to eventually get everything categorized, hopefully put online. Knocking on wood, crossing my fingers, it's gonna happen. And really make sure that like our whole collection is like displayed to the best of our abilities and taken care of.
Yeah. Try not to have everything in storage. I'm trying to find at least a home for everything. Obviously there's some things that we can't find a little home for, so then it would have to be put into storage, but majority of everything did get relocated to different locations.
All right, sounds good. Yeah. We have another question about the duck hunting industry, which I know Tuckerton Seaport does have, you know, all those decoys. So I guess anything else in regards to the hunting industry?
Not in this new exhibit.
Maybe in the future.
In the future, definitely. We are looking to put a little bit more in the hunting shanty. So right now, I don't know if you happen to have been to the Seaport, but we have a building we call the hunting shanty, and it is essentially the decoy museum. It has so many beautiful decoys from all different points of time. And we're looking to kind of like activate that space in the future. Like where we keep thinking of different ideas to, like we move some things from Tuckerton 1900 in there.
Like the hats.
So we're looking to kind of just like activate the space a little more, make that place a little more fresh as well. But that's another thing in the future. We have a long wish list.
Mhm.
Yeah, so our goals are to, over a period of time, slowly redo each exhibit. So hopefully, you know, in the future, we're doing it one exhibit at a time.
Yeah.
So like our first exhibit will be Tuckerton the People. The next one hopefully, you know, be folk art 101, and then, you know, maybe the decoy, or next the Parsons or the Surf Museum. So we're just doing everything little by little right now.
Oh, it's very exciting. You kind of, you know, think about the space you have and the stories you want to tell, and for each one. And I know it's a lot of work with each one. Yeah.
I'm hoping to do a lot of rotating exhibits. So I know like when there's certain holidays coming up, I'm hoping to make exhibits that are related to that holiday. So, you know, you have something new to look forward to every month or every holiday. So yeah, that's my wish list right now. I'm hoping.
Yeah, it's a great idea. And then the last question I see in the chat for now, are you both partnering with the Tuckerton Historical Society for research as well?
I did reach out to them for a couple things. I also reached out to the Barnegat Historical Society as well. Any information, any research or anything, I have been contacting them and the Barnegat Historical Society as well. Yeah, so any like questions, any inside scoops. Actually, it's funny because one for the Cinderella exhibit, we were able to get some things, and you know, doing a little research, I found out one of the historical societies had it, and actually ended up telling them the story about, you know, Cinderella, and they were like, wow, I didn't even know. That's something new. So yeah, we're just trying to, you know, hopefully they'll educate me on some research and I educate them on them. And maybe, you know, they'll know the inside scoop where I could look for, you know, more information. Aside from, you know, the census and newspapers and other
Right.
primary sources.
That's so cool. Like, oh, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, it was really funny. Yeah, you definitely have to come. I think it's gonna be a good one. It's gonna be a good exhibit.
All right, great. Hold on, I see. Just people in the chat saying excellent presentation, and updating on these exhibits. So great job. Someone just moved to Tuckerton recently and is very excited to learn more about the people and the history.
Oh, yay.
Yay, that's exciting.
Very exciting.
I want everyone to come. Come find me.
And I think that's it. Are there any remaining questions, comments? I don't think so. All right. So could folks go on your website if they have any other questions or you know, questions about visiting or more information about the updates? Is there somewhere where they could go?
So right now our website is under construction. So if you go on our website now, it's a little rough. But you know, hopefully our website will be updated soon. But you are welcome to call Facebook. I know on Facebook it's a little bit more updated with like the exhibits and everything, so I would keep an eye out on that.
We also have a newsletter, like an email newsletter that goes out every other week. As we get closer to the like final like opening, the grand opening of this exhibit, we're probably going to send a big like informational thing out about that. Trying to think.
Okay. What do you what's the timeline that you're kind of expecting, just so people are in the, you know, have it in the back of their head?
It's coming around the corner, coming down the pipe. We are thinking March.
Okay.
Like end of March.
Mid to late March.
Midnight March.
Timeline moves a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. That's our goal. Our goal is to probably like the end of March area. So that's where, you know, fingers crossed, if everything works out like it's supposed to work out, we will be open during that time period. Like Adriana said, there will be a big email blast telling you, you know, about the grand opening and more information about it.
Okay. Yeah.
And if you would like to sign up for this Tuckerton Seaport email blast, I'm going to put my email down below so I can get you guys signed in. Just email me, contact me, and I'll get you signed up for everything.
Yeah, sounds good. So if you sign up, you'll just get automatic notifications. Like Arlene said, you can also call. So if it's like end of March and you're interested in knowing, you can always call the Seaport, which is that number right there that I just put in the chat. So multiple ways of finding out more details about this new great exhibit that you can have going on. All right, anything else? I don't see anything else in the chat. Well, I also just want to say I'm very excited, you know, for all of the new and exciting things going on at the Seaport. I'm excited also to work with both of you guys, Arlene and Adriana, and collaborate with you on Lunch and Learns or, you know, the Life on the Edge exhibit. So we're really excited to, you know, move forward with that too. Oh, I see you just put it in the chat. So everyone who's online, or I'm sorry, in the chat, you can see Adriana's email right there if you want to sign up or if you have any other additional questions. So, well, thank you again, both ladies, for that great presentation. And we're excited to see the Seaport soon. Thank you for your time. Thanks everyone who attended for your time today and listening to our talk. We'll let everybody go for the afternoon. Hope you have a great day.
Bye, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.